everyone, I hope you all are doing great. Many of you might be knowing that April is celebrated as Autism Awareness Month. So today, let's put some light on what is autism, what are the primary signs and symptoms of autism, what are the types of autism, and why is it important to identify early in life. This is Dr. Jyotsna Tanikundala from Daffodils Child Development Center, Hyderabad. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder wherein you will see atypicalities in the behavior after a certain period of development. 50% of the population might not exhibit any signs and symptoms before 15 to 18 months of age. So the average age where the parent report concerns is around 15 to 18 months. Of course, as professionals, we might be able to identify certain signs that's a red flags even before 15 months of age. In general, the signs and symptoms of autism are varied. There's a reason we call it as spectrum of disorders. So autism is currently labeled as ASD, that means Autism Spectrum Disorders. So definitely by the term itself, it is understandable that we can never diagnose autism based on one sign or the symptom. We need to have a group of it in order to arrive at the diagnosis. Now let's look at the signs and symptoms of autism. So the predominant differentiating factor is the solo play. Kids with autism generally try to self-engage themselves rather than playing with the peers or with the adults around them. And there are many signs and symptoms of autism. The important ones are not unable to communicate. Even if they communicate, it would be restricted to the need-based communication. And children might not be able to follow commands as in the same level as their peers. Children might not be responding well to the name call. And there will be children who doesn't even learn to point even after crossing 18 months of age. Along with these subtle signs, there is also typical symptoms like toe walking, hand flapping, repetitive behaviors, obsessions at the very young age, like arranging things in array. They might be so specific about the schedule. So these are some of the typical symptoms. Now let's see why is it important to talk about awareness on the autism. The main factor is the statistics. As per the recent stats by Center for Disease Control 2020, 1 in 30 children are getting affected with autism. And few other statistics says it's 1 in 56. So this rate itself is so high. That's where we need to conduct more and more awareness programs regarding autism. Now let's look at the types of autism. So for the better understanding, we can divide autism into two types. One is the classical autism and second one is the virtual autism. Even though there is no professional body which classifies the virtual autism, but as clinically we are seeing the transient autism in children who are exposed to high amount of screen times. And when you remove the screen and provide the appropriate interventions, we are seeing a lot of good development in these children. So then clinically we might keep them under the criteria of transient autism or the virtual autism. And there is a second group of children who we call it as classical autistics. So this is what the major study is done on. This is where we have a good classification system by ICD-10 and DSM-5. And in the classical autism, definitely if you go with the ICD-10 classifications, we can divide them under three groups. So that's based on the level of autism. Level 1 is nothing but the mild autistics, level 2 is moderate, and level 3 is severe autism. And your interventions, the intensity of interventions, the number of interventions, this all depends on the level of the autism. Why we need to identify early is because of the neuroplasticity of the brain. Only if you identify early, you will be able to intervene early. And early interventions always depends on the neuroplasticity of the brain. Because the child has lot of neurons in the young age and all the behaviors will be dependent on the neural wiring. It's based on the synapses and the strength of the synapse. So if you want to teach any new appropriate behavior to the child, it would be better done during this neuroplastic age. 0 to 3 years is generally considered as the neuroplastic age, and at the max it can reach up to 5 years. So if we have awareness that there is something called autism, and it could be developmental in nature, not that it comes only from birth, then definitely our awareness will increase. If the awareness increases, the early pickups or early identification increases, and the early intervention will increase. When the early intervention increases, definitely you will be able to see much better development in children who are affected or who are at risk for autism. The conclusion for today's discussion is that everybody please be aware that there are many number of children who are developing this developmental disorder called autism. And remember, autism is not diagnosed with one symptom. We have a scientific evidence and a scientific process for diagnosing children under the spectrum. Also, we have a scientific process for treating these children, for helping them to be better in their development. There is a scientific basis for classifying and for diagnosing children under the spectrum. Similarly, we have a lot of evidence-based approaches which helps us in treating the children under autism spectrum disorder. So, please be aware about the term autism and try to spread the awareness. Thank you.